I would like to call the meeting to order, May 8th special board meeting, and for the opportunity to see the strategic plan rolled out before us. We're excited about that. Mr. Chambers, excuse me, let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Mr. K. Allen.
Here.
Mr. Ross.
Here.
Mr. Skidmore.
Here.
Mr. Eastwood.
Here.
And and Ms. Parkhurst.
Here.
Thank you very much. We're excited tonight to get what we've seen as the first rollout of the district strategic plan, and I will turn this over to Aaron Sable.
Good evening. Happy to see that we have an audience joining us for our special meeting. The intent of tonight's meeting is to roll out our finalized rough draft, if that makes any sense, of our strategic plan. Board members have been involved throughout the process and engaged in various committees, but this is the first time that we've taken the opportunity to really outline the entire plan that we've been working on throughout the course of this school year. And these efforts really started back in August, and I'm excited that we've gotten to a point where we're getting close to a final product. We do have a document, you can see it says June 10th, that we're working on for the final presentation on June 10th, which will be held at the library on the square at 9 o'clock in the morning, and that's a Saturday morning. Today, though, we wanted to present a draft to the board so that you had an opportunity to review things before the final rollout to the community. And also so that you had the opportunity to provide us with any feedback, any questions, any support, any suggestions that you might have moving forward. So at this time, I'm actually going to take the podium because I want to present to you. And the format for this evening is we have leadership from all of our strategic planning committees that are joining us tonight, and they're going to present specifically on their section of the strategic planning process. So you're not just going to listen to me. I'm going to take the podium now. Our strategic planning process consisted of 3 phases, and we actually talked about these phases for my entrance plan as superintendent. And they were to listen, to learn, and to lead. The focus of these 3 phases is to first listen to what the feedback is from around the community so that we could begin to work together to collaborate to direct our district in the direction that's expected by our community members. One thing that we've really pressed upon is that it's important that schools maintain a product of their community. That means if we are meeting our community's expectations, we are doing a good job as a school district. So the feedback is extremely important. So phase 1 was listen. Multiple stages were implemented in order to gain feedback, not only from the community, but also from our staff and local businesses and students. Again, we wanted a global perspective to ensure that we're able to meet as many needs as are expected from us from all portions of our school community. Some examples of how we've done this is we've worked on expanding our reach in terms of social networking, not only in the use and collaboration across the district with various forms of social media such as Twitter, Facebook, but also the revitalization of our website, which is just outstanding. And I'm thrilled that that was being worked on even prior to me coming here, because it's been a very important tool to help us get input and feedback. We started off the school year back in September with a community meeting. The purpose of that meeting was to see what was on everybody's minds. So it was a fairly laid-back meeting. We had approximately 50 to 60 community members and staff that attended that meeting. We presented on various aspects of the district, and then we asked for feedback. And we essentially asked 3 questions. What are we doing great? What are we doing okay? And what can we be doing better? So that was the first piece of feedback that we got, and we also invited the community, parents, and staff to become members of the process as we get knee-deep into our research. We then followed that up with a series of community chats, and I have to say, for me, especially being new to the district, it was one of the most important things that I think I have done, simply because it was a tie off, coat off, let's have a conversation. So at the community chats throughout the course of the year, we held them around the community, and we were able to get the kind of questions that maybe people wouldn't normally ask in this type of atmosphere or format. We wanted them to be relaxed, we wanted to get the tough questions, and we wanted to have the conversation. Some meetings, of course, were better attended than others, but I was impressed by the feedback, especially as we moved through the year, that we were getting from the community. In particular, our curriculum community chat, which we had in the winter, we had the back room at Panera absolutely packed. Literally, there wasn't any place to sit and people were standing. So to see that kind of passion from our community when it comes to the actual academics and the curriculum, which of course is the whole reason why we all are here and exist, was pretty outstanding. Those community chats did serve a purpose this year in helping to provide us information in regards to the strategic planning process. I do want to emphasize, though, that those were not created specifically for the strategic planning process. Those were created as a tool to create more of a bridge between ourselves, the district, and the community as well. That's an initiative that will be continuing into next year, even when our strategic plan is completed and board approved, because the constant feedback is going to be a vital part, as you'll see, in the strategic plan. We worked very carefully to develop goals that are going to need to be reevaluated on a yearly basis so we can assess how we're meeting them year to year. And part of the way to get that feedback is through those open community chats. In addition, we did several surveys. The first survey we did was for the entire community and staff. That survey asked more specific questions than we asked at the initial opening strategic plan meeting. We followed that up with a specific survey for staff-specific type questions related to what they're doing in their classrooms with instructional practices and what directions our staff thinks we need to go. We also asked for our business community to complete a survey for us. Our business community's feedback is important, especially when we're looking at college and career readiness, which is a focus of the state and also a focus of our district right now, and you're going to see that within our strategic plan. It's also an effort outside the strategic plan. We want to continue to grow those relationships with our business community and really have a cooperative relationship. In addition to that, I've been visiting many community groups throughout the course of the year. Kiwanis, we've been to the Silver Sneakers over at the Rec Center. We've met with the Chamber. We've met with Chamber leadership. We've met with our union leadership. So we've really tried to have formal and informal conversations and discussions as we move through the school year. So that's the listening part, getting all the feedback. Phase 2 is the learning part. And this is the phase where we took all the feedback and we tried to formulate it into a usable document, which is what I had shared at the beginning, which is still in its draft form. So we developed 4 committees. We had our Curriculum, Academic, and Instruction Committee. We had our Communication Committee, our Facilities, Grounds, and Business Committee, as well as our Finance Committee. Each of those committees met approximately 5 to 6 times throughout the course of the year. Those meetings began in the late fall, early winter, and literally some of them just ended a few weeks ago. So there was a lot of work to be done in those committees. The goal of the committees was not to necessarily create more information. It was to take the information we already accumulated and develop a priority list for those items. What the committees ended up doing is they found the top 4, 6 to 8 items which we received feedback on. They developed goals with timelines for each of those strategies that we wanted to hit on, and they also began discussing action plan steps as well. Now, the strategies that are within the strategic plan, they are not meant to change. So they're the overarching goal of what we're trying to accomplish within the strategic plan. Where we see flexibility within the plan is when we look at the goals and the action steps. We didn't fully use SMART goals, but we used the SMART goal model. And we didn't fully use SMART goals just because there were so many goals that went along with the strategies. I don't think it was reasonable to take that approach. However, in our goals, we made sure to state specific tasks that we wanted to achieve, what we wanted the outcomes to be of those tasks as they relate to the strategy, as well as develop a timeline. Something that was very important going into the strategic plan, and I've seen this in other districts I've been in. Oftentimes a strategic plan can be really generic, and it really encompasses things that you should already be doing as a school district. What we tried to do in this strategic planning process is break the plan down even more so that we can be held accountable based off of the strategic plan, so that the community, board members, teachers, parents can go back to the strategic plan and actually have an idea of what we're trying to accomplish and when over the course of the next 5 years. Again, I've already said this, but I think it's important to restate. These goals are going to be reevaluated on a yearly basis because we can't plan for every bump in the road. So we need to have the flexibility with our strategic plan to maybe change directions if need be, change strategies, and that'll be through the reevaluation process within each of the strategies, within the goals on an annual basis. Financial planning. The financial planning piece is actually probably one of the biggest challenges. You know, it was fun to work with people across the community and develop goals, but once you start placing a price tag on meeting those goals, it becomes a little more challenging. It is a priority for us to be fiscally responsible with the money that our community provides us. That's one of the reasons why we work so hard to try and get so much feedback, because we want to make sure that these strategies and these goals are the expectation of our community. What we did in looking at the financial planning is we did not want to put the community in a position where they were feeling handcuffed, where we need to have this money to do this. If we don't have this money, we're not going to do that. That wasn't our goal. Our goal of the strategic planning process was and is to continue to move Medina City Schools forward despite what funding we're looking at down the road. So we have almost a two-tiered approach, and you're going to hear when the committee lead members come and present to you, they're going to explain to you things that would cost additional dollars and things that we're going to do despite the dollars, because it doesn't cost additional dollars, or it's a minimal amount of extra cost, to everything in between. So we're really trying to take a responsible approach towards the rollout of this strategic plan. Part of the discussion that I anticipate is going to be the result of the strategic plan, and I did not anticipate that for today. Today's purpose is solely to roll out the strategic plan, but taking a look at our upcoming levy. We've got our emergency levy, which will be up in 2018. We've been discussing putting some sort of a levy up next spring. So a year from now. And I know we've already been having some preliminary discussion about what that levy should look like. Should it be a renewal of the 5-year emergency? Should it be a continuing levy with the same amount that the emergency currently is? Should we ask for additional funds? So I believe that this strategic plan is going to aid us in moving forward in making some of those very difficult decisions. Our plan in the fall is to actually survey our community once again, related specifically to the strategic plan, so we can gain a better understanding of what their expectations for us are as they relate to finances, and also as they relate to the initiatives across the district. And the final phase, phase 3, is lead. And we're not there yet. We're getting there, though, and that's the exciting part. The lead portion of the rollout of our strategic plan is the actual beginning of the implementation. So the big step will happen on June 10th at 9 o'clock at the Medina County District Library, where we are going to personally invite a formal group of people to participate in that meeting. I know our committee chairs are going to want to have their committees there if possible. I'd like to extend an invitation to the mayor as well, because this documentation will be done and we will be in final format, and we will have completed discussions at that time with the Board of Education. My hope and my plan is to make a recommendation to the board at either our May, preferably our May, but possibly our June, depending on conversation, regular meeting for the adoption of our strategic plan. The adoption of the strategic plan means that these are the goals that we're going to be working on. It doesn't cement the financial piece of this, because that is going to be dependent upon the feedback that we still need to get from the community in the fall, as well as the type of levy that we end up putting up next year for the community's approval. So the lead portion is going to be actually going out and working with our staff, working with our administrators to implement all aspects of the strategic plan to whatever degree that might be. And at this time, I want to invite Tina up here. Tina is our Director of Educational Services, and she's going to present the curriculum and instruction portion.
Hi. Okay, so like Erin said, we had a committee for student academics, and we had approximately 20 people on that committee from staff, community members. We had students from the high school attend, and we got very good feedback from all of those. The first thing we did, as Erin said, is we looked at all the community survey results. Then we looked at the staff survey results, and from there we came up with our priorities. So I'm going to go through the 6 top priorities that committee came up with. So the number one issue for staff and community, according to the surveys, was all-day kindergarten. So our first goal from the Student Academics Committee was to offer free all-day kindergarten to all incoming students. Right now, we have a tuition-based all-day kindergarten program in our district, and that's been running for about 4 years now. Currently, next year, we have, I think, 8 funded units that we'll have across the district. So people would like to see that expanded to all students and then for it to be free. So because we already have a plan in place, we already know what our all-day kindergarten program would look like. We already have the curriculum. We already have the schedule set up. So we're good to go there. Financing, then we would need additional funds to do that. So year one, there's really nothing that we can do to move towards this goal. It would all depend on additional funding. And you can see the breakdown of cost there and what that would cost the district. Are there any questions about the all-day kindergarten goal?
How did you come up with the 5-year plans? Just because it's a 5-year strategic plan, so by the end of the...
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's what we were thinking.
And how many new positions are represented there?
Well, this is an estimate because we never know. We never know how many kids are coming. But right now, we were estimating 5 or 5.5 positions we would need to add. We currently have positions. So if you look at the second line, it says loss of tuition. Right now, those teachers are being paid for full time, but part of their salary is coming from the tuition that's coming in. So we would lose that tuition. We added that in.
So in year 2, though, we would be able to offer it to more students and then just gradually increase the number of students over the years?
In year 2, provided we got additional funding, we would be able to then implement free all-day kindergarten to everybody, and then the increase would just be regular salary increases. The first year, it's a little higher because we would be adding in furniture and then the extracurricular materials, professional development for the new teachers, if we needed. And again, all those are estimates. But then after that, those would be salary increases.
Mrs. Cassidy,
Yeah.
the all-day kindergarten, is my understanding several years ago, Ohio Department of Education required it, and then districts could obtain a waiver. So it's my understanding that we currently have a waiver.
No,
that,
actually,
or-
they were going to require it, and districts started getting ready. A lot of districts actually put all-day kindergarten in place, and then they pulled that requirement, so we didn't need a waiver anymore. We started with a waiver, though. You're right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question, Tina, about the years. Are we talking the second year being 18, 19?
18,
Or are we
18,
off by
19.
one?
Yes, that's
Year
right.
1 is 17, 18, starting this fall. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, so our second goal was to annually increase inquiry-based learning experiences through increased student investigation using questions, problems, and scenarios. So something that kept recurring through the community surveys and the staff surveys were to add more of these kinds of experiences to kids. And sometimes it came across, it read as STEM, and sometimes it came across as problem-based learning or project-based learning. So we kind of made it a broad umbrella of inquiry-based learning experiences. So those are the kinds of things. Our district has already started to move in that direction, and I think we've presented here before about our project-based learning initiatives that we've been working on. But this would be more of we'd have more of an emphasis on it, and we would be able to move it forward. So what we were proposing, or what the committee was proposing to do, would be to create a district committee that would learn more about the different inquiry-based models across the district, go research them, do some reading, and then share their research and make recommendations to the board and to the staff on which way we should go. And then from there, in year 2, we would develop building-based committees that would learn more about it, start implementing it in the classrooms. Year 3, then, those committees would train the rest of their buildings, and we would have more teachers doing those kind of inquiry-based learning activities. So the cost for this in year 1 would be very minimal, and we plan to go ahead with that regardless of additional funding. What will require additional funds would be the speakers, conferences, substitutes, materials, those kinds of things. We will be able to do some of it. It's just depending on just how much we'll be able to do. Will be depending on additional funds. So are there any questions about that initiative?
Regarding the committees that you're going to put together,
Uh-huh.
how many people generally do you put together on a committee, and how does it break down, go from administrative versus your certified? How does that
Yeah,
look?
and we don't have all that worked out yet, but we wouldn't want a committee too large, but we would want a good representation of principals and teachers and staff.
One of our goals moving through this year and then definitely into next year, and some of it's going to be seen through some personnel adjustments that we're working on making, is to really have teacher-driven curriculum in the district. And part of that is putting our teachers in leadership roles so that they can help drive the curriculum. They're the ones that are in the trenches working with it day in and day out, so it's important to us to know that they own what's happening in their classroom, because otherwise you can have the best program in the world and it's not going to be successful. So I would anticipate in these committees, especially the inquiry-based, which is really a K through 12 initiative, we would have representatives across all the grade levels, both in terms of teachers and administrators.
I had one question about the last line on that, the IBL coordinator. It sounds like that would be a permanent position that would kind of
Oversee
Oversee
it.
it.
Yes, and do the additional training and the coaching necessary to move into a model like this.
So year 1 and year 2 are kind of the setup costs,
Correct.
and year 3, 4, and 5 is ongoing, which would just be the coordinator role
Correct.
at that point.
Right.
Okay.
I thought we were under more like a project-based learning. Is inquiry replacing that, or is it?
Well,
We're gonna have
inquiry is
both.
kind of like the broad umbrella, and there are different ways that you can get to inquiry-based learning, and project-based learning is what our district has been experimenting with. There are other models out there, so we wanted to make sure that we went out and researched and learned what other districts were doing, and then we picked the very best model for us. But it'll all go together. They're all very similar. Any other questions? Okay. So our third initiative was to annually review elective courses at the middle school and high school levels to improve or expand academic opportunities, And so what we would do is we would have a committee form to look at the electives that we're offering at both of those levels. We wanted to administer student and also staff surveys at the middle school and high schools. And we wanted to reconvene the committee to look at those surveys and then review the current master schedule to see, are there electives that maybe we don't need as much anymore? Are there other electives that we need to add? And then look at staffing implications based on that, on those results. So really the cost here would be for 3 new elective classes. If that's what the committee determined that we would need. Again, this is a ballpark.
From the surveys.
Well, these would be surveys we would actually do. They haven't done the surveys yet. So, oh, you mean the community and the staff survey?
Yeah.
Oh,
I didn't
I'm
know if
sorry.
people wanted more foreign languages. That's
Yes.
right.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I interrupted you. Yes, foreign language would be part of the electives here.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, and really the feedback we got in this goal under the Improve Academics came from a lot of feedback that we got across all forums, not just the survey, but also the community meetings, that parents wanted to see more offerings for their children. And part of what I personally heard a lot about, especially at the high school, was students not having the opportunity to take some classes because the enrollment was so high. And foreign language was part of that discussion, as well were more science classes. More, and I'm going to step on Tina's toes a little bit here because she's going to talk about this, but college and career readiness type coursework. So it's really looking at a whole gamut. So the goal of the committees will be to pinpoint. We heard the feedback that we need to have more academic offerings. What exactly do those need to be? Because we want to make sure that they're the right offerings when we do in fact implement those. And hopefully, as a result, too, we'll see less kids in study halls.
Right.
I do have to admit, some of our study hall numbers run fairly high, and a big reason for that is not having the additional course offerings for our students to take.
And then I also want you to know that we do this anyway. So this year we looked and we added some art elective classes at the middle school that didn't require any additional funds, and we'll continue to do that with or without funding. But if we were able to, we could add some classes.
Tina, this says 3 new elective classes. Is that 3 per middle school, 3 per high school?
And that was really a ballpark. So that number is 3 total, and that's, again, a ballpark, depending on what the surveys come up with.
My question is similar. In our 2013 levy, this was one of the things we talked about bringing back, and we did. And I think we've seen the improvements of having the kids not in study hall. I forget the number of how many we brought back at that time, but it seemed like it was like 5. And we had 3 or 4 different courses in both the high school and the middle school offered at that point. So this is in addition to that.
Correct.
Knowing that we've already, from our low of where we were in 2012, we've increased, and now we're talking about another
Further
leap of that.
increases, correct.
Okay, because if
yes.
you just read this and not know that, you say, oh boy, yeah, but that's in addition to the ones we've already made that during that time after the 2013 levy, so it would have started in 2014, 15, those were added back.
And all of those
already.
electives are still going on, yes.
And this would be in addition to that.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, so the next goal was to create consistent district grading and homework practices by the 2017-2018 school year with full implementation by 2021-22. So what we heard from parents and community members from the surveys and also from our community chats were some maybe inconsistencies between buildings on how much homework was being given, and some questions about the amount of homework that was being given. So what this committee proposed to do is to establish a committee of parents, teachers, administration, and students to study current research on effective homework practices, see what other districts are doing, establish district-wide homework and grading practices, and then share that out with staff and start implementing those best practices. We also talked about, we also heard feedback from parents and community members about needing more help with Blackboard, and so we wanted to put a webinar together for parents on how they can use Blackboard, how they can find their students' homework online in an easy way, and we want to make sure that everybody has access to that. So once the professional development is done for staff in year 3, we would just tweak as we needed to, and this initiative really won't cost the district much, if anything, so this is something that we would do with or without funding. So.
And I have a student advisory committee that I meet with on a monthly basis, and we start meeting about midway through the school year, and the 2 main things that those students have brought up over and over again are these 2 topics. And it's interesting when you listen to the kids and you get their perspective, because it's not that they don't want homework or they don't want assessments. They just discuss different approaches towards doing that. So it's extremely interesting feedback. But I do have to say I'm extremely excited because I'm having my last meeting with them in a couple weeks here. And I'm excited to show them that the things that they talked about were important to them are part of this strategic plan.
when you get to a point where we know what direction we're going, especially with the homework concept and trying to get that kind of leveled out, is there a method to communicate to the parents from a building or through the district? Because that was something we've heard quite a bit about. Do you have a way to let them know what they
Yes.
should be expecting?
Absolutely. We'll make sure that parents are notified of the district guidelines. We can put that, we can talk with Mrs. Busby about putting it in the newsletters, and we'll get it on the web, and we'll make sure people know about it.
Regarding Blackboard, I think that's great to have a webinar for parents. Will all the teachers be consistently using it, though, across the district?
Yes, and that's something else that we heard, and so that's something that we will be looking at too, and making sure that that homework is consistently put on there so that parents can access it and students can access it.
This goal is kind of one of those ones that's very, in my opinion, kind of subjective and also based on many different variables. And I wonder, is it something that, I mean, how do you measure that? How do you measure the consistency with homework and studies throughout the district? Are we, isn't that kind of in the eye of the beholder a little bit? I mean, we have to give latitude to the teachers who are aggressive teachers, those that are good. I mean, I know everybody's good, but there's got to be different levels of, back to our years in first grade where we said, oh yeah, I wanted Mrs. Roberts and not Mr. such and such. I mean, there has to be latitude in what makes a teacher teach and what makes a student learn, right?
Absolutely.
To be able to measure that would be robotic is what I'm getting at, I would think.
Right, absolutely. And what we would be doing is looking at best practices and just doing some professional development, and then making sure there's consistency in things like Blackboard. And we'll be looking at, and we'll be talking to teachers about amounts and things like that.
It's about developing a common philosophy or approach across the district, and that's going to take a group effort in order to make that happen. But in addition to that, it's looking at maybe some simple strategies that can be implemented as well, so that our students aren't overwhelmed. For instance, some of the high school students on my committee had shared that they'll have 3-4 tests in one day. And their comment is, well, why can't we coordinate that where science tests are on Tuesdays and math tests are on Thursdays? So that's part of the conversation we want to have.
I guess what I was coming at it from a standpoint of expectations, I think parental expectations are hard to meet in this category because there's always a feeling of my kid didn't get what that kid got. I mean, and I think that to be able to say that is one thing, to be able to deliver and promise on that consistency, it's all on a level of, how we measuring. In my opinion, I don't know. What's your thought?
Well, from my understanding too, from talking with Mr. Sable and even Mrs. Cassidy, I thought we were trying to go for more meaningful homework, whereas then the teacher would need to use some more discretion, perhaps, or that's where the professional development comes in because each child may have differing amounts of homework, correct?
Right, and that is going to be hard. I mean, everybody's going to say, well, my homework is meaningful, but I think what Erin was saying is true. We're trying to get a consistent philosophy across the district, and then as individual problems come up, we can always deal with individual issues. But overall, that everybody understands the guidelines, everybody knows what our philosophy is. I think that will be a big step in the right direction. Okay. Okay, so then the next one would be to implement an academic recognition program at Medina High School by the 1920 school year. We have an academic recognition program at the elementary schools. We have one at the middle schools. We have one for seniors, but we didn't have anything to recognize academics for freshmen, sophomores, and juniors. And so that's something that we're going to have a committee come together and put together a program so that we could honor those students. And then the cost would be very minimal. That's something that we could do, again, with or without additional funding. We wouldn't need that. Any questions about academic recognition?
No question, just a statement. It's wonderful, because I think there is a gap in that, for sure. Because I like the presentations that are done at the middle school, especially with the 8th grade, and then that big gap. And everybody's got to have a little bit of incentive from time to time.
And then our last initiative was to increase outreach to students and parents about college and career opportunities, and to increase programming and resources to students in the area of college and career planning. So the parents on our committee and the survey results and what we were hearing from the community said that we need more emphasis on college career planning. And we invited the high school counselors to come and talk to our committee, and what we learned is there is so much going on that people were unaware of. And so our very first point of business is going to be to market what we're already doing, so that parents know all the great things that go on at Medina High School. So we're going to be coming up with an explanatory pamphlet or packet for parents explaining all the things that will probably be going home to all 9th graders next year, and then from now on we'll be sending that home. There was also some talk about miscommunication between different social media. So our counselors send things out through Twitter, which kids are on, but parents are more often on Facebook. So we know that we have to link the information to Facebook as well. So we're going to be doing more multimedia that way. We were going to survey students and parents to see what further support they would like to help them prepare for college and career, and investigate other options, which would include parent nights, like a financial aid night, just informational for parents, the possibility of field trips to learn about different careers, to set up college, career, and coffee sessions throughout maybe on Fridays at the high school, set up a job fair for non-college bound seniors, or even so far as an elective class for seniors on resume writing and college applications. So we were going to do some research and decide what would best fit our district, and this would depend on additional funding depending on how far we go. Again, we can market what we're doing because we're doing lots of great things, and that would be very minimal cost. Other things that we would do might incur a cost, and so we would need to look at additional funding if we wanted to go that far. But a lot of this we can do right in the very first year, and then implementing the new programming, we would need to wait till the second year to do. So this is kind of what funding would look like. And then I have an asterisk by the elective teacher / program coordinator, because if we went as far to add in a class, we would need that amount. But to do things like add a parent night or organize speakers, we would maybe only need a program coordinator. So it depends on what the committee's recommendations are on that.
College and career, do we have some specific opportunities for our students who aren't maybe going on to college, but we want to get them career ready within this house, within our high school and so forth? What do we have in that? Is that part of our plan, or is there a place for those people?
Yes, that is part of our plan, and there are opportunities for students right now. So, and that would be something that we would put in the brochure so that everybody would know about them. But yes, and that like I said, there would be, right, for example, there's a job fair at the Medina County fairgrounds for students who aren't going to college, but they could look at careers, and we brought students there, so that's one of the opportunities that we had for them. So we will just increase those kinds of opportunities.
Tina, the kids that go to the JVS, do they fall under our plan, or does the JVS have their own strategic plan?
Yeah, I think that would be a separate plan. This would be for students that were here.
But they are, even though they're assigned to us?
Yes.
Yeah, the Career Center does develop its own strategic plan. We do play a role in that, since obviously that impacts our students. Dr. Kwolek actually met with Career Center leadership at the end of this year, and that's one of the things they discussed was the strategic plan for the Career Center.
Any other questions? Okay, that was it for the academic committee.
I had one more.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We have a tutoring center just down the hall.
Uh-huh.
So for the kids that are struggling, use that as much as we can, or it seems like that's more self-initiated. It's up to the kids. Do we, I don't know, I don't know if it's linked to their progress and, you know, and that's how we help them, or is it totally up to them to want to do it?
Yeah, I would have to look into that. I'm not exactly sure how that all runs, but I do know that that parents and teachers work together, and oftentimes teachers will recommend students to get tutoring, but it would be up to the student to go.
Yeah, the tutoring center at the high school is fully funded through our school's foundation. So that is not a cost to the district, and I believe it's a combination of students electing to go down there, as well as students maybe being directed to go down there to get additional help. And I know a lot of the support that's provided within that environment is peer-to-peer. So students that maybe are strongly grasping a topic, helping out somebody else who may be struggling a little more.
And if I could just point out too, the board is hearing this for the first time tonight. I don't even know if Doug and Becky heard this or not. So the plan, we're getting fed this information just like the media is right now at the first time we're hearing it. So the fact that I don't have a question on a certain section doesn't mean I may not have a question about that section, but I need to digest the information.
Absolutely.
and get back. So there may be some areas where we haven't had a question, but I may have more questions later on it. So I just wanted to state that you know, these are plans that we're hoping that we'll adopt, but there's a lot of things that we have to go through, and there's a lot of cost with this. So I think that's just a point that we should state. Thank you.
To that end, how would you like us to address the questions, Aaron? Through you or through like in this case, Mrs. Cassidy, or what would you recommend with that? Like if we got home and saw on goal number 4, questions about that, because I think that's what Rob's getting at, is that we will have questions and thoughts and ideas.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think initially here you can direct those through me. We actually have a central office team meeting coming up on Wednesday, and this is going to be one of the things that we discuss. So by Friday, we'll have a formalized plan for you.
And in the conversations that you just shared, is there I got a number of additional positions I think would be required. I noted about 10 in just what we talked about. Is that kind of close to what it might be? Just
Yeah, if you were talking all-day kindergarten, elective classes, yeah, it could be up to that.
okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
And Amy Busby, our Director of Community Relations.
Good evening. As Tina talked about, we went through some very similar processes where we formed a community engagement committee. So that consisted of community members, staff members, and members of administration. The committee met several times to review and consolidate the feedback that was received through all the surveys that Mr. Sable already had mentioned. And the staff had determined, the community and staff gave us, key goals to discuss in this plan. So based on all the feedback that we did receive and rifle through, we came down to 2 different strategies. The first strategy kind of has a twofold action plan because it's targeting 2 different groups of people. So we want to make sure that we're encompassing additional communication with those groups. So the first strategy is continue to foster consistent and transparent communication to build awareness and trust among all stakeholders. So within that strategy are goals to increase communication to our senior citizens through engagement by the 2019-2020 school year. That doesn't mean that we'll start doing that in the 1920 school year, but it's going to take some research to find out the best way to get to that particular group that's important to our community. The other goal is to increase communication to community members who do not have students enrolled in our school district. We're going to try to utilize additional communication tools, and again, by the 2019-2020 school year. And again, that doesn't mean that we'll start doing that, but it's going to take some research on how to better get to that particular group of people. The other side of the coin, which is the other action plan, is to increase engagement and communication with the business community through programs beginning this coming fall. So we'd like to expand that programming all the way up until the 2021 school year and beyond. The first action plan that I'd mentioned is to improve communication to senior citizens and community members who don't have children enrolled in our school district. And a couple of ways that our committee talked about doing that, and ironically enough, I had the opportunity to actually speak with a few senior citizens during the strategic planning process. And they really had a lot to offer as far as ideas on how to reach that particular group. And one of them was forming a senior citizen advisory committee, expanding the distribution of monthly information that we already put out. So our Be Informed newsletter, our schedules, those kinds of materials, they go to doctor's office and dentist's office. And it would be great to collaborate with those particular businesses in our community to reach our senior citizens. Also, we currently do distribute information to our senior living facilities, but there are certainly more that we can do and go to and be a collaborative partner with them. As Mr. Sable already mentioned, we do visit with the Rotary Kiwanis, but we'd like to further engage them in what we're doing within our school district. In addition, we'd like to further engage our retired teachers. They're a very important part of our community, and certainly we'd like to continue to share the story of the district with them and garner their support. We'd also like to encourage sign-ups to receive district newsletters and other district informational pieces, share the story through email. Certainly hard copies will always be available because not all senior citizens and or people in our community that don't have children enrolled, they rely on hard copies to get that information. We'd like to research and create courses for community members, such as computer classes, art classes, mobile device usage. We had done this once a few years back, and it was very well received. And this is something that we continue to hear about, that people want to come into our school buildings and work with our staff and work with our students. So I think that's a very important add. In addition to that, we'd like to research and invite seniors and community members to attend our district honeycombs. The honeycombs are our professional development for all intents and purposes. So it would be great to have them come in and see what our staff is learning, and they can learn from that as well. We'd also like to research and create infomercials and flyers and use with the Channel 36. It's a very valuable tool that we don't really exercise, and so we'd like to increase our use of that. It's amazing the viewership of that particular channel. They watch board meetings, they watch city council, so it's a great way to get information out about our school district. We'd also like to share district information with the county auditor, county commissioners, township trustees, mayor's office, and other city entities. They have newsletters that they send out to residents on a regular basis. And we've actually started to collaborate and create relationships where we're swapping information. And I think that's really important to not only distribute our information, but also other things that are going on in our community. The other side of the action plan under that strategy is to improve communication and engagement with business community and the community as a whole. So one of the things that came out of the survey with the businesses is that they'd really like to come into our buildings and see what we do on a daily basis. So one of the ideas that we're looking to implement coming this fall is to do a bus tour of our school buildings in our school district. We do the same idea for our new staff every year. So it's a great way to learn about Medina City Schools, and get a better feel for what our students and staff do on a daily basis. We'd also like to create an Ask the Superintendent or Building Principal section on district web pages or the building pages. We currently have Ask Your Board President, and we currently have Contact Us, which is used. People do submit questions to both the board and to the school district, and it's a great way to have two-way conversation indirectly with our community members. We'd like to create a Did You Know section on our website to make sure that we're providing accurate facts to our community about issues or things that are going on in our school district. I know we tried to do that a few levy campaigns ago, and that seemed to be well received. People really appreciated the fact that we were issuing facts about things that are going on. As Mr. Sable mentioned, we'd like to continue our community chats. I think it was kind of a slow go to begin with, but as the year progressed, more and more came to these community chats, and there was valuable input that we received from them. So we'd like to continue to do that and have conversations about different topics and things that are on people's minds that we can hopefully add some information to. We'd also like to continue to engage administration and staff, get people involved in community events, volunteership. When we do have community things on the square, it'd be great to see faces out there helping. So the financial plan. Truly, action steps that are related to this first strategy really aren't going to cost the district any additional dollars. Where it might cost additional dollars is dependent upon how far we want to take some of those things. So if we want to get into additional printing, if we want to get into purchasing mailing lists, if we want to get into mailing in general, those are things that are going to start to require additional funds. Certainly there are creative ways to work around those things, but certainly if we want to grow our communication level, those are things that we might have to look at. So as you can see in year one, the cost to the district is very minimal and isn't going to deter any of the goals that I've mentioned. But as we move on into the strategic plan and dependent upon how we want to grow our communication, that's where you're going to see the dollars rise. So that means that we might have to turn to outside services for marketing support, printing, mail house, those things that we can't necessarily do inside. But certainly, as a committee, we'd like to take a look at ways that we might not have to exercise those things. The second strategy, the district, as we kind of went through this process, we have a multitude of logos and different identities. And this strategy would be to create a clear and concise brand for the Medina City Schools, making the district easily identifiable. So the goal would be to research and create a single brand identity across the district by the 22-23 school year, pending additional funding. This is going to take some research. This is going to take forming a committee from all segments of our school district to really talk about what our school district should be from a branding standpoint. So the action plan would be, as I just mentioned, create a committee to kind of work through that identity. Is it something that we work with that we already have, or is it something that we can create altogether different? We need to take a look at our mission statement and our vision. Are the things that we say now, are they really what our school district is all about? We need to update all areas that contain district identities. So if we change one thing, we're going to have to change everything. So that's where some dollars are going to come in. Our current logos are not trademarked or under copyright. So that could cause a potential issue down the road. So it would be great to be able to trademark and copyright those items. So that would require a lookbook so that people can properly use our logos from that point on. So this initiative will require additional funding, as I mentioned. If funding would not be available, additional research would be completed by the Community Engagement Committee and others that wish to participate to determine an alternate path to achieve this goal. So these are estimated dollars. Certainly after research is completed, that could change, but certainly this is a good target. Are there any questions?
I just wanted to, I guess, comment. I know in some conversations you talked about how it's not like you can just put something out on the electronic web or whatever, because there's a significant number of people who don't get that and still want to be involved. So I appreciate that you're looking at all the different facets there, and that's got to be challenging, but I think it is important to pursue that. So I think that's a good course. Thank you.
I have a question regarding the trademarking of our logo. Would the cost, once that's done, wouldn't that just be a one-time cost, or would there be
Technically, yes. The reason why the numbers are carried across is because there could be additional things that need to be changed along the course of the way. So if we create, additional signage or those kinds of things. So I was trying to plug in dollars to just kind of accommodate those possibilities.
Would that also then be a source of revenue for us, for companies that would want to use our logo?
It could. That's part of the research, and part of there'd be a royalty involved. So,
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else?
Thank you.
All right. Next, Mr. Burkhart.
Good evening. Our facilities committee basically served as our group to study the survey results, and then we added one other staff member and one other community member. And when we reviewed the feedback, the one common theme we saw was energy efficiency. And we had it on both ends of the spectrum. We had folks saying that the school district is really energy efficient, and kudos. And then we had the other end where folks were saying we could be more efficient. And they're true too. There's always ways to be more energy efficient. So our goal is to raise awareness of energy efficiency across all our facilities. We'll do that by annually communicating those efficiencies, showing the board and the community our data, as well as engaging students in energy efficiency. So right now we have, say, groups of students that are involved in recycling programs. We would get them more engaged in energy conservation programs, so shutting off the lights when we leave our classrooms, those sort of things, to kind of get more awareness, more buy-in on energy efficiency. And then secure Energy Star rating for all our buildings. Now, there's talk at the federal level of the EPA maybe having some budget cuts in 2018 and the elimination of the Energy Star program. So like Mr. Sable mentioned, these goals will have to continue to monitor and adjust if things like that would occur. And then last but not least is we want to complete a district, we're almost completed at this point, with a study of our lighting across the district. Back in 2007, we completed a energy conservation program where we replaced all the lighting with electronic ballasts and high efficiency bulbs. Well, that lighting is getting to the point where it's reached its life expectancy, so the timing is really right to look at LED technology, both inside the buildings and in our parking lots, because that technology has come a long way, the price points have come down, and the reliability of the product is much better than it ever has been. Are there any questions on that particular goal? The next strategy is to maximize capital improvement projects across all sectors of our school district. And this came about from survey questions that came back with different projects people would identify as what they see we should be spending our facility dollars on. So we've always focused on safety as our number one as far as spending capital dollars to make our buildings safer and more secure. So we'll continue to do that. And then minimizing future costs. So that's issues like a roof leak that could lead to damage to the inside of the building and further costs. And then last but not least is projects that the students, is right in front of them, that's an improvement that they get a direct benefit of. So we'll continue to work with our staff and students to identify projects across the district. The facility committee that meets the first Friday of every month will continue to review those annually and then set the priorities to incorporate those into our 5-year capital improvement plan. And then last but not least, that plan will be shared with the school board and available on our website. Our financial plan in the facility area is, as you know, we have the 0.5% sales tax fund that generates approximately $1.2 million for us to do capital expenditures. When we look at the LED retrofit, doing not only our 10 school buildings, but our 3 other buildings, which includes transportation, our operations facility, and our school board office, it's about a $1.6 million project. And then we anticipate our electrical bills to go down by $200,000. Now, these are early numbers. I'm still getting all the engineers to fine tune all this, but so in other words, we're looking at, you know, an 8-year payback or better. And then I'll work with Mr. Chambers, because there are certain funding mechanisms that we would qualify for that, you know, maybe other monies would come in to help take care of this project. So are there any questions on that particular?
Are you finding that the LED bulbs are lasting that long usually? I mean, sometimes it seems like I buy them for home. They don't always last as long as I think that they're supposed to last, but
I think there's a whole spectrum of quality out there, from Philips to brands that you and I probably never heard of that come out of China. So it's important that we select a reliable brand that is going to stand behind it and have some sort of warranty that goes along with it.
In some of the concepts or the forethought, I know I've heard conversation, but are things like, I think of specific projects, maybe at Claggett, the possibility of a building addition to eliminate the modulars, or possibly a rework in the air conditioning, or some of the big ticket items. Now those items really can't be dealt with on the amount that we get from our sales tax dollars. We've struggled with that for years. Is there, what are some different ways that can be addressed looking forward? Just curious if you have something you can enlighten us with.
We're talking 20+ million is our full plan. If you look at 5 years of all the projects by facility, it's a $20 million price tag. So with 1.2 million a year, we're just scratching the surface when we do this. So it's probably bigger picture, like potentially a bond issue or an additional PI issue or some other funding mechanism would have to come in to get us caught up to that point.
Yeah, and our facilities committee really does an outstanding job forecasting for the future. And one of the things that we're going to explore once we implement our strategic plan and also move through our operating levy is, do we need to look at a potential bond for a bigger project, because it's not realistic to expect those funds to come out of the general fund, which are really geared more towards the academics and instruction.
John, I just wanted to mention the rec center is still part of our facilities
Correct.
plan, even though it's a collaboration with the city.
Well, there is a separate plan for that, and that's separate funding. It's not mixed in with this 5-year capital improvement plan.
Okay. And one other question: is solar off the table? Or
No, it's not. Actually, we're exploring that right now. There are some benefits that are out there, especially in Ohio, for companies to invest in solar and get tax breaks, and then so they would own the solar panels and the equipment, and then we would buy power off of them. But the idea is we would have to be able to buy power for a less amount per kilowatt hour than we buy it from First Energy. So that's always been the challenge, because we buy power through a consortium, so we pay a really low rate.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to put that together right now. Actually, we have more people interested.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Burkhart, so if I'm understanding this correctly, the only item really listed is the LED retrofit that would have an additional cost
That's correct.
so far. So the plan is still to follow whatever the facilities committee has developed for the 5-year plan?
It is. I didn't incorporate what those existing expenses into this, because we were focusing on what additional money might be needed to do these goals.
Okay, thank you.
speaking for the facilities committee a little bit here, given that I'm on that, that is one of those quandaries that we're in is, as Aaron threw out there, the goal to not use the general fund money for that. Just like with Tina's plan, if you threw in and said, hey, we would like to spend an extra $1.5 million a year, and this is what projects, we get $1.5 million for the projects per year over the next 5 years, that would be another strategy that some of us around this table would like to see happen. But unfortunately, that takes from either the balance that we have in our monies right now with Mr. Chambers or potentially services and curriculum, other things off the back end. As a board, though, I mean, it is certainly something that we could entertain. And those of us who are pro-facilities would like to entertain that, knowing, though, that that does one of those two things. Either eats into the balance that we have there or would rob Peter to pay Paul, which is never a good thing. But it is an idea. And we could have put that down here and just said, hey, maybe next 5 years we take an additional 1.5 million and we would just draw that down from the general fund. That would be someplace I would like to go.
Just to support that conversation, we have had, informal conversations about that. Ultimately, you have to take care of what you have, and that's not going to happen without choosing one of those options. And so that's something I think that really needs to be discussed in more detail and, bring the options forward. So I agree.
Well, it looks like this goal does, though, fit the strategy, which was to raise awareness of energy efficiency.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chambers?
And last but not least, Mr. Chambers.
It's much more comfortable on that side here. We had strategies to continue the transparent communication about the finances of the board. That's plain and simple. What we look at all the time is trying to communicate it in a way that not only the board could understand, but also the public could understand. So our goals reflected this in a way. We report monthly and semi-annually on the strategies and the strategic plan and the uses of the funds. We report monthly to the board as well right now for our finances. So it would just be mixed in with the financial basis. We're looking at increasing community awareness of the district finances using tools. We already put our information on the website. Aaron asked if I would be comfortable about getting out in the community and talking to the different groups such as Rotary and Kiwanis. And as I say, it's much easier on that side to talk than it is to talk right here. So I'm very pleased with doing that. But we could do that for you, and we could make it sound just like it is, clear, concise, consistent with what the goals are of the entire financial plan. We have annual review of the goals. We're going to be doing this, as Aaron said before, we're going to be doing this. It's going to be the group getting together, reviewing the finances that we have with the goals that are out there. And if we need to change up, then we will change up as we go. And then research and seek alternative funding. What we're looking at is grants. We're looking at possible bonds. We're looking at possible permanent improvements. That type of information that's out there. There's always something out there that businesses are willing to do. There's always something out there that the state's willing to provide. So we're going to be looking into that.
Because we're not going to change our investment strategy. We're going to keep it the way we're doing it now. In other words, if we get too aggressive, then sometimes you get sloppy. But we're not going to.
Are you talking aggressive with the investment strategy or aggressive with the strategic planning?
I was talking about investments, our investment strategy.
Our investment strategy is put out there by the state. We can only use certain investments, so we can't get very aggressive with our investment strategy.
All right, so that won't change much.
That will not change, no.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Okay, our actions. Well, you heard the actions, and they're what we're looking at in dollar figures for our facilities, for our community engagement, and for our student and academics. If you took the average over the 5 years, we're looking at $318,000 for facilities. The average over the 5 years, $80,140 for community engagement. And our big priced item right there is student achievement, student academics at $1.04 million. Total all these together, and we're basically looking at $1.44 million per year. And the reason we want to look at it on an annual basis is if we were to put a levy out there. And if you look up there, you'll see it's roughly 1.47 mils. Now, that 1.47, because everything out there right now is an estimate, we put a little bumper on there so that if when the estimates come in and they're lower, we can lower that millage down as we get towards the fall here. So if you want to know what 1.47 mils is, for a person with $100,000 value on their home and property, it would cost roughly $4.29 a month. So we're looking at 1 cup of coffee a month that would cost. We broke it down by $25,000 intervals. If you're going to go up to $200,000, then naturally you double it. $250,000, you double the $125,000. So those values are out there just to get a comparison of what you would need if you were going to implement everything that the strategic plan has to offer. Questions?
So what you're saying is basically if we included everything that is on the list currently as we understand it, that we would need to have our current levy increased by approximately 147?
That's correct.
1.47? All right. I just wanted to kind of hear that. And as far as when the time comes, I think it would be helpful for those numbers to be increased as far as what a $100,000 home is. You know, I might just go 100, 150, 200, 250 or something. Get it up into some other ranges, because I think probably a majority of the homes are in that ballpark, but there's probably some represented as well that would like to see that.
And that's why I said if you have a $200,000 home, it's basically twice what's up there. So you could do the quick multiplication for yourself. Other questions? Now, as I say, this is if ideally everything is implemented based on the estimates we have right now. When we come down into the fall and get the finalized figures, naturally this number will change. So we're looking forward to the fall. We're looking forward to getting everything out there for the individuals. And between now and then, we have June 10th, if I recall. We have June 10th. We have information coming out, and then we'll be updating the community as well as the board after that.
And if I heard you right, you are game for having some community engagement.
That's what I've been told. So
I'm just trying to read in here if you're going to be part of a chat
thing.
maybe where people have questions, because when it comes to money, everyone has a thought, and you're a pretty good authority to have around there to at least steer us in the right direction.
Well, I appreciate that very much. And yes, I realize that, people out there have to be able to relate the finances of the district to their own finances. So hopefully we could do that for them.
I have one last question. I know you said these are estimates, but would these estimates also change based on how the final state budget comes out if we end up losing some money?
This estimate is only for the planning itself. It's not for what we currently have or what may occur with the state.
It's a whole
now,
separate.
with our forecast from October, we had already planned for losses at the state for the tangible personal property, which if you look at what came out from the Ohio School Boards Association, the estimates they had included the tangible personal property tax losses.
Okay. And our May forecast, we will see at the May board meeting,
Yes, you will.
and the public can then take a look at that reflected in there
That's
as well.
correct, yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay.
Great. I want to thank the board and everybody who joined us for your time tonight. I do want to reiterate that the numbers that Mr. Chambers shared at the end was for full implementation of this plan, but we purposely structured it for the goals to be able to be reevaluated and adjusted. And we will be moving forward with some change in a positive direction for the district, despite of a potential increased funding or not. But we felt it was important to lay out the entire picture.
I believe that concludes our presentation initial, right? And I would like to make a motion that we would move into executive session for the purpose of preparing for, conducting, reviewing negotiations or bargaining sessions with employees concerning their compensation or other terms of conditions of their employment and for legal matters.
I'll second that.
And who all should be there, Aaron? Okay, and we'd like to have Chris and Jim available. Thank you. Roll call. And for those of you who came for this meeting, thank you so much. And please feel free to ask, provide information. We appreciate your concern and your care. Thank you.
Mr. Eastwood,
Aye.
Mr. Callan,
Aye.
Mr. Ross,
Aye.
Mr. Skidmore,
Aye.
and Ms. Parkers.
Aye.
Thank you.